Well, welcome everybody. We are honored to be joined by Professor Gerd Gigerenzer this evening, who was distinguished as one of the top 100 global thought leaders by Swiss Duttweiler Institute. We will have this webinar this evening as an interview, and at the end of the webinar, we will have a question-answer part where Professor will welcome questions from the audience. Before leaving the microphone to our speaker, let me introduce him as quickly as I can. Professor Gigerenzer is currently director of the Harding Center for Risk Literacy at the University of Potsdam in Germany. He is also partner of Simply Rational, the Institute for Decisions. He is former director of the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin. And he's also former professor of psychology at the University of Chicago. He is John M. Olin Distinguished Visiting Professor at the School of Law at the University of Virginia. He's a member of the Berlin-Brandenburg Academy of Sciences. He's a member of the German Academy of Sciences. He's an honorary member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He's an honorary member of the American Philosophical Society. He's also awarded honorary doctorate from the University of Basel, awarded honorary doctorate from the Open University of the Netherlands, and he's a Batten Fellow at the Darden Business School, the University of Virginia. He won the Best Article Prize in the Behavioral Sciences. He also won the Best Book Prize in the Social and Behavioral Sciences by the Association of American Publishers. He won the German Psychology Award. He also won the Communicator Award of the German Research Foundation. His award-winning popular books, Calculated Risks, Gut Feelings, and Risk Savvy, were translated to 21 languages. And Professor also has several academic books. Welcome, Professor, and thank you again for giving us your evening hour. I also wish to thank our audience for their interest and participation. I'd like to make one last comment. I'm especially delighted to have you with us this evening because I'm not only an avid reader of your books and articles, I also used your teachings in my life and in writing my books, and I extensively benefited from them. Now, Professor, I wish to start with a fundamental question. What are some of the misconceptions about intuition?
Yeah. So first, I'm glad to be with you. And what are the fundamental misconceptions about intuition?
Yes.
The first one is that intuition is a sixth sense or something that God tells us, or that intuition is something that only women have. We men have also intuitions.
Yes.
And the next misconception is that the association between intuition and biases and the general view that intuition needs to be looked up with suspicion, while reasoning and logic is always right. So, and the third final misconception is the opposition between intuition and between deliberate reasoning. These are not opposites. These are not enemies. A good reasoning always needs both of them. They go together. And usually there's intuition, there's deliberate search, there's data, then there's an intuition, there's data, so it goes back and forth. So these are some of the misconceptions.
Thank you, Professor. Now I want to come right to the title of this webinar, we talk about intelligence of intuition. So what constitutes intelligence of intuition?
Yeah. So let's define what intuition is. Intuition is a feeling that is based on years of experience, which comes into consciousness quickly, so you feel you shouldn't do that, or you might engage in some option. And third, at the same time, we do not know what the reasons are. So intuition is a form of unconscious intelligence. Just to understand, if we would do everything deliberate, we couldn't do very much. The poet Fernando Pessoa once said, could it think the heart would stop beating? So we need to accept that much of what we're doing, including knowledge, is unconscious. And we rather should be proud about that than looking down it.
Yes. Now, Professor, you talked about heuristic revolution in your books.
Yeah.
And there was like a groundbreaking concept after probability revolution in mid 17th centuries. Now, can you tell us what is a heuristic revolution and how it is linked to intuition?
Yeah. So the probabilistic revolution in the 17th century, that consisted from taming part of uncertainty. So some risks can be calculated, they can be hedged, and that is what probability theory is about. But there are uncertainties where one cannot calculate what the optimal option is. The heuristics revolution is for that part of uncertainty where the risk, which cannot be reduced to risk. And on the revolutionary parties to devise a study, a field that takes heuristics seriously, studied how experts use heuristics, studies the ecological rationality of heuristic. That's the question, where do they work and where do they don't work? And this revolution has been spearheaded by people like Herbert Simon. And we've been trying here in Berlin to develop it. And by looking at the adaptive toolbox that a person or an institution has to make decisions under uncertainty, that means the ensemble of heuristics, and also its ecological rationality. That answers the question, which heuristic is a good idea for which situation?
And so, as I understand, if I understand correctly, Professor, we have a logical way of looking a subject, and we have maybe psychological way of looking subject, and they whatever is correct for that individual depends on the environmental conditions. Sometimes logic is correct, sometimes psychological window is correct.
Yeah.
And so because of this, logic may be logical, but not correct choice all the time.
Right. So,
yes.
The heuristic revolution starts with the insight that there's no single strategy that is the best in every condition. And that's for some hard to take, because we have this kind of idea in us, or this ideal, that there should be one answer to every question. That's the religious part of decision-making theory. It's one God that can tell us everyone. And the humble versions of that is, so most economists think about expected utility maximization. That's the only rationality that counts. Others add Bayesian probability updating. And these are all interesting tools. But the error is to think that only one of these tools, like a hammer, can solve all problems, as if all problems would be nails.
Yes, you have a hammer, every problem is like a nail.
Yeah.
Basically. Now, you said that this world of risk with known options and consequences and probabilities, etc., is a small world.
Right.
And world of uncertainty is a much bigger world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But somehow we ignore this much bigger world since mid of 17th century.
Yeah.
This heuristic revolution comes up and opens our minds.
Yeah.
Yes. And, sorry.
Yeah. You're right. We researchers, we ignore often that there's uncertainty as opposed to risk. But the practitioners in the world outside, for instance, the insurers, don't. And even since the 17th century, it was clear that some problems could be calculated and hedged and insured. And for instance, life insurance was always a matter of statistics. But in the 7th century, one would not use statistics for, say, maritime insurance, but look at the captain, the crew, and the last news about pirates. That was clear. That's an unstable world. And you would err if you simply take the data from the past and project it in the future. And today, we have a similar division. And the division is between, say, managers who make personal decisions based on heuristics, who make hiring decisions based on heuristics. For instance, word of mouth. You want to hire a candidate, and you might ask, rather than doing an assessment center, your own employees whether they can recommend a person. And this strategy, that's called word of mouth, has been shown in many studies. It can hardly be topped by any sophisticated strategy. Why? Because your employee who recommends someone feels responsible and accountable and will not recommend someone who does less work than the others or who causes troubles. So these are examples for heuristic strategies. But even in management, they have been rarely studied because of the assumption that there would be always a solution that can be calculated, that's the optimal, and heuristics are second best. Only true in a small world of risk. It's not true in the real large world of uncertainty. Here, heuristics are indispensable. We couldn't do anything without them.
Yes. Now, of course, it's very difficult to accept in a world of more and more and more and more data that something less is actually more.
Yeah.
It's very, counter education in somehow. And in your research, you have countless examples how actually less can be more.
Yes.
So, for instance, can you give us some more examples of how less can be more? for instance, you had this fantastic, diagram which showed Tallinn and take the best as opposed to multiple regression compared, and so it shows. If it's prediction, multiple regression is fantastic. But if it is about the past, like fitting, multiple regression is the best. But if it's prediction, it's the other ones. Heuristics are far better. Now, you already said that in management, they use this word of mouth heuristics. It's really an example of how less can be more. But can you give us a few more examples so we can really crystallize this concept?
Yeah. So before I start, the general point is, if you have a small world where everything is certain, nothing unexpected can ever happen, then more data is always better, but not in a world of uncertainty. And that's very important, this distinction. So, for instance, I work with the Bank of England, and the Bank of England regulates other banks. So it tries to do, for instance, find out which bank is in trouble. The financial theory assumes that this problem is one of calculable risk. That's at least the models being used. So it's probability theory. And then the result are immensely complex calculations known as value at risk calculations, where in order to find the value at risk of a large bank, one would have to estimate thousands of risk parameters, and they correlate. So in the order of millions of covariances. Good luck. This borders on astrology. So when I gave a talk in front of large investment companies and said, look, and also supervisory companies like the Bank of England, look, this borders on astrology. Not that anyone disputed that fact, but they were saying, what else should we do? No. So value at risk has not, and Basel I, Basel II, Basel III, they have not prevented any crisis, not predicted any crisis. And what's the alternative? The alternative is we know that under high uncertainty, we need to make the models simpler. That means more robust. Optimization is an illusion. And so we work with so-called fast and frugal trees that may have only 3 questions. So is the leverage ratio below a certain amount? If yes, or higher than an amount, and that already may decide whether a bank is in the category of potentially troublesome or not. And otherwise it goes on, and another question is being asked. And so these are robust schemes. They ignore information, but they often have a better chance to survive in the future. What financial institutions still do is to use traditional probability theory and apply it to situations where it doesn't work well, like uncertainty. And this is called the turkey illusion. Now, turkey, the animal. And do you know why? So assume you are a turkey. It's the first day of your life. And a man comes in and you fear he will kill me, but he feeds you. Second day of your life, the man comes again and you fear he will kill me. No, he feeds you. Third day of your life, same thing. According to Bayesian probability updating, which is considered the rational method, the probability that a man feeds you and doesn't kill you goes up every day And on day 100, it is higher than ever before. But it's the day before Thanksgiving, and you are dead meat. So the turkey missed an important information. The turkey was in a situation of uncertainty, not calculable risk. And it's not turkeys or other animals who most of the time use probability theory in the wrong places. It's us, humans. When we fail to distinguish between a situation, like when you play the roulette, then calculate. Don't use any heuristics or whatever. But if you want to find out which banks are failing or other things in the real world, then be careful, make it simple, and make it robust. And also, what you gain is to make it transparent.
Professor, now these heuristics are rules which help us in the world of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And, how do we get heuristics? Where do we find them? Some of them comes with genetic knowledge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
we have evidence from animals that some heuristics seem to be built in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like how do honeybees construct a hive? How do they find a new nest place? That's all a bundle of heuristics that are very interesting, have been studied by biologists. And it's the same about humans. So we can find out how players in sport, for instance, make decisions. And it's all heuristics. So for instance, and there are unconscious use of heuristics, so the player doesn't know. So if you ask him or her, they don't know, but they can exercise the heuristic. An example is baseball or cricket or soccer. So when a fly ball or a ball high is coming in, a player knows intuitively where to run. How does the player know that? No? If you ask them, they say, yeah, it's gut feeling, but I can't explain it. So we and others have done studies, experimental studies, where you can show and analyze the process. And the process in this case is a quite fast and frugal heuristic. So in the simplest case, when the ball is high up, the player does the following. First, fixate the ball with your eye, then start running, and third, adjust the running speed so that the angle of gaze between the ball and your eye always remains constant. And then you can see it. If the angle always remains constant, the ball will end up where you are. So this is a heuristic. The opposite would be calculating the trajectory of the ball. And again, good luck. You would need the initial angle, and the problem is not calculation, it's estimation of all these things. You would need to know the initial speed and many variables, and the heuristic avoids all this information and calculation and just solves the problem with a single cue, the angle of gaze. So this is one class of heuristic where one detects a powerful cue that leads us to the right decision.
Professor, I want to come to the popular subject of artificial intelligence and intuition, because everybody is interested in artificial intelligence much more than intuition these days. Now, could you tell us how artificial intelligence help us in the world of uncertainty?
Yeah.
if ever.
So the important question is, where does AI work and where doesn't it work? So again, the illusion is that AI, which is nowadays mostly associated with deep artificial neural networks, and if I don't say otherwise, I mean that. So the illusion is that AI would soon be able to do everything. Yeah. That's the old hammer and nail idea, and the old religious fantasy that someone could solve all problems for us. So where does AI work? Now, it works best in stable worlds where tomorrow is similar to yesterday and which are well defined. So the big successes were in chess, in Go, in industry applications, and in every problem that is fairly stable. The big failures are in situations of uncertainty. So Google engineers failed to predict the flu. The best deep neural networks struggle with predicting human behavior. And the story about self-driving cars, meaning level 5 cars, has meanwhile people realize there is too much uncertainty and it won't work. And Elon Musk may be the last one who believes in self-driving cars, but I think mainly because to get attention, while Ford stopped the program last year, VW stopped the program last year, Uber stopped it still years ago. And if one would have taken the stable world principle seriously, then one would have immediately seen self-driving cars defined as cars which can drive safely without a human back up, and in every condition they are an illusion. What will happen is something more interesting. So we need to change our environment to make it more predictable for automated cars. That's called a level 4 car, which can drive without a human backup, but not everywhere. So this is a very much more interesting process that we need to adapt to the limited capabilities of AI and change our world so that it becomes more predictable, more stable. We will have, if we want that form of autonomous cars, then we need to rebuild our cities, at least parts of the cities, where small level 4 cars can safely drive, fenced the roads in, walls on each sides, no pedestrians, no cyclists, and most important, humans will no longer be allowed to drive themselves, because we are a major source of uncertainty for, as you know, I've been in Istanbul, just look at your traffic, but it's not much better in Berlin. People don't follow rules. And that's the biggest problem for an AI.
Yes, well, it's a little bit better nowadays, Gerd. I came to this country many years ago, many years ago, and the traffic was really chaotic. But nowadays, it's much more orderly. Somehow people got adapted to the rules of traffic. So I don't know when you were in Istanbul last time, but if you come these days, I think you will find it, improved. But nonetheless, certainly uncertainty exists.
Yeah.
It exists all the time. Of course, what we are saying about artificial intelligence is applicable to many areas, even in industrial engineering. For instance, we have industrial engineers. today with us. Even they deal with like logistics, which is very predictable, but there is an aspect of it which includes estimations and uncertainty.
Yeah.
There, I think, is the limit of the artificial intelligence.
Right. And it's important to understand that, because we have on the one side, other people are afraid of AI. That's not a good idea. AI is helpful. But then we have the other side who make outrageous claims that there will be soon a superintelligence. There will be no superintelligence. It's just another religious dream. And even the dream of eternal life for my friends in California who think that they can upload their brain to a superintelligence and then survive forever. Who wants to survive in a superintelligence, if there would be one? So we need to ask the question, what can AI do? What can it not do? If the world is stable, yes. And if it's not stable, then make it stable and make people more predictable if you want AI. And the second principle is that we have to adapt to AI if we want it. And that may mean that we are no longer allowed to drive. Or it may mean that we behave us in a way that makes us more predictable. So that's a very general take on AI. For instance, what we are doing is to help AI by implementing the smart heuristics that humans use. And these are heuristics for uncertainty. And recall, under uncertainty, big data doesn't help you much. If the future is not like the past, then you can collect more and more data from the past. It will mislead you more and more. So and in this situation, where the future may change, very simple heuristics that people use, like the recency heuristic, you forget everything, just take the last observation that you have, the last data point, can help. Here's an example. Remember when the Google engineers wanted to predict the flu? So precisely flu-related doctor visits. And which is a great idea, because these are short-term predictions, because you want to know what's going on now, or at least in this week, and where the flu is spreading. So where we don't have yet data. And they developed what was called Google Flu Trends, which ran till 2015. And it is a big data algorithm. And it started out with a secret algorithm that had 45 variables selected from some like 50 million search terms. And then when they started to make predictions, shortly after, the swine flu came. And the big data algorithm had learned flu is high in the winter, low in the summer, high in the winter, low in the summer. And the swine flu came in the summer. So it underpredicted, based on past data, the flu-related doctor visits, and the engineers couldn't stop it. So they had to update it. Now the interesting thing is what they did. So you have a complex secret algorithm for a complex problem, and your algorithm fails. What do? Make it more complex or make it simpler? From our research, we know make it simpler because it overfits. The Google engineers didn't know that inside. They made it more complex. And it was now another secret algorithm with about 160 variables instead of only 45. It did not improve the predictions. And they made more updates. We do not know what they did then, probably make it more complicated. And finally, they gave up. Now, what's the alternative? The alternative is what I call psychological AI. So you take seriously the evolved brain of humans. And we know from studies that people forget, but forgetting is functional. In situations of uncertainty, it's good when you want to predict. So the recency heuristic just takes the last data point. So we adopted the heuristic to predict the flu. Basically, the heuristic was, so the flu rates, so the doctor visits rates, will be next week or will be the same as our last data point that we have, usually 2 weeks ago. It's very simple. Again, a heuristic that only uses one data point, like the Gaze heuristic. What was the result? We tested it over the entire time Google Flu Trends ran, and in every year, the simple heuristic made better predictions than the big data model, and for all the updates of Google Flu Trends. So here we have a demonstration that in a volatile, dynamic, uncertain world, and that's what coronavirus create, that's what the flu virus creates, simple pays. And one data point can be better than big data. If the flu would be predictable, and also the coronavirus, then big data would help. So for astronomy, big data helps because the heavenly bodies, they are stable. And people, at least now, have not much influence on them. So here's the situation: get more data, get more data, get more data, and optimize. But that's not the case in many other situations where you need to simplify and use smart heuristics.
Yes, Georg, you gave us examples of smart heuristics, and one of your examples was Bank of England, where you have developed fast and frugal trees.
Yeah.
Fast and frugal tree is a partial tree, which doesn't have all the branches. It's a very simple tree, and it has a very simple algorithm. It functions like a heuristic, a simple rule.
Yeah.
Now, it was artificially generated. It was not genetically coded. It was generated by experts working on the field. And you also demonstrated that heuristics can be generated or created based on person's experience and knowledge, as you have done it when you're running your research group in the Max Planck Institute.
Yeah.
Can you tell about that experience, how heuristics helped in research?
Yeah. I have run a research group for 22 years at the Max Planck Institute. And so about 35 researchers from all levels, from graduate students to postdocs to associate or the professors, and then in addition, a dozen staff people like IT people and secretaries and so on, and then in addition, all kind of student helpers. So that's about the idea. So the focus of the research was, and it still is, how to make decisions under uncertainty. So a real radical uncertainty, not when you know everything and the future is like the past. And there are two ways to do research. One is to select a discipline and try to be the king in the discipline. The other is to select a problem and to try to do your best about the problem. And this is my way of doing research. And then you have to go beyond the disciplines. So I always have about people from about 8 to 10 disciplines at one point in time. That's typically psychology, economics, computer science, machine learning, philosophy, animal biology, engineering. And getting the forces together for doing research. So that's a first heuristic principle. So don't isolate you with your own discipline where you feel comfortable. So create an environment where people from different disciplines are together. That enabled me to learn every day something new, because there were always some among my researchers who knew many things I didn't know. And then the question is, for instance, how to start such a group? And the heuristic principle that I used when I started this group is temporal proximity. I hired the people and had them start all at the same time. That's very important, because people have the natural tendency, those who are first are like the big brothers, and they look down to the latecomers. And also when they're together, they have to deal with the administration, which is, of course, overwhelmed by everything starting the same. So you create a kind of comradeship. So they try to solve the problems together. And so that's one principle. Another principle is spatial proximity. So have everyone on the same floor. So when my research group, grew larger and larger, and more guests from everywhere in the world were coming to spend a week, a month, or longer with us, we needed to expand. The architect said, we'll build another building in the premises. I said, no, that will destroy our research. People in different buildings, they hardly communicate. Even on 2 different floors, communication goes down by half or so. So what did we do? We extended our floor horizontally. So we built on the building. So to still keep everyone on the same floor. So these are some principles how to create a good. And also we had a meeting every week with coffee and cake. And there was a rule. If you publish a paper, you bring cake for the entire research group. So that's the inverse of what most economic departments do. If someone publishes a paper in a good journal, the person gets a chunk of money. No. We did it the reverse. If you publish, you pay for everyone, which is an acknowledgement that the ideas are not coming in one person. Everyone has had its share. And I just give you another example of a rule that's very important to maintain the spirit, the open spirit of a research group. And which is, make sure that you have a contrarian in your group. A contrarian is someone who dares to contradict what I'm saying, to contradict what the group thinks it's saying, but on a respectful and factual-based situation. And I always made sure that we have at least one contrarian in the group who speaks up. When everyone thought that's the right thing to go, that person said, wait a moment, here's that and that argument. So this person is oft an annoyance, but in fact, it's very important for the health of the entire group. And so there is a number of these kinds of heuristics that shape the emotional climate in a group, like trust. So the moment you have everyone at 4 o'clock for tea and coffee, and it's important that I don't tell everyone to go there. No, I never did this. I went there myself. And people then soon learn, oh, here I can ask all the dumb questions I have. There's a machine learning people. Now tell me, what is this bias variance dilemma? And what does that mean? And also, if they didn't talk about the science, then about personal things, and it forms trust. So this investment is very important for a healthy group that is international and that is interdisciplinary. And the output of that is a fantastic research program that I alone could have never have set up.
This epitomizes the importance of the leader in a way, Georg, because the leader brings heuristics to the institution, and his heuristics becomes the culture of the institution after a while. So it's yeah. And
You're
it's,
right. It's the leader's toolbox.
Yes, it's leaders adaptive toolbox.
Yeah.
And now, how can we train leaders? I mean, if let's say we take an institution, and this institution wants to streamline its operations. They want to use heuristics for to be very efficient and all that, and to make it like a company culture. Can we have like a general process, at least some steps that we can take it, and go from there for heuristics training programs?
Yes, yeah. There is an article in the Annual Review of Organizational Psychology last year, first authored by myself, who explains such a program about heuristics in organizations. But I give you a few examples here. So one important thing in an organization is to hire good people. Without good people, nothing will happen. So how do you do this? And there are a number of heuristics for hiring. We talked about one, word of mouth, which is excellent. But there is also an important other principle, namely to give the hiring to those people who understand most, not you because you're superior. So for instance, a Max Planck director, like myself, has a number of secretaries for the group. We had about a handful. And so there was quite a lot of hiring going on. How do you do it? Now, of course, we advertise, and then we have 100 applications for one position. Now, one thing would be that I decide about all of these things. But look, I'm not the person who really knows everything what a secretary should do. So the way I did it, I had the other secretaries look through the applications, all 100, so select a subset, maybe 10 or 8, to be invited and tested. So I gave them the test, like Professor Gigerenzer has an invitation for giving a talk there. He doesn't really want to go there. Write a letter of declining. And then can you see the tone? This kind of tests, they're necessary. But when the applicants saw that the other secretaries test them and do the interviews with, they'd never seen this before. It's usually the boss or the semi-boss. And then they select a final group of 2 or 3 with whom the emotional feeling is good, where they also know this person will not try to work less than we. And at the end, I interviewed the last 3 or 2, and I make the decision because I have to take the responsibility. If something goes wrong, it's me, it's not them. So this is just an example how you can structure a process to give the major decision power to those who know most, not those who are on the hierarchy up. But at the end, you take the responsibility for what's going on. The result is that we have excellent personnel because the other secretaries will never tolerate a person who doesn't work as much as they. And also, they like each other.
Well, so one of the keys is to hire the right people. Is the,
Yeah,
the major.
That's very important. Yeah. And here also we had another general principle: delegate decisions down in the hierarchy to the competent people and trust them rather than control them. And that helps to create an identification with the organization, that people think I'm taken serious. I can make a decision, but I have the backing of the boss.
Yes. Gerd, at this point, I wish to give a chance to the audience if they have any questions to ask you.
Yeah.
They have very patient. Actually, I wish to thank our audience for their interest and participation, and they have been with us. And I'm wondering if there's any questions from the audience.
If there are no other questions, can I ask a question to Dr.
Yes.
To Professor?
Please go ahead.
Professor, thank you very much for the valuable information you have given so far. I really benefited a lot from all this as a person who is not expert in this topic, but who really wonders to catch up with the latest updates on this topic. I would like to ask one question. What is the difference between emotional intelligence and intuition?
Yeah. Intuition is much broader. It may include emotions, it may not. So the examples I gave, like the heuristic that baseball players intuitively use to catch a fly ball, has little to do with emotions. So emotions itself can be seen as heuristic strategies. Often people, they use emotions in a functional way. Anger is a message to someone else. Or love is also a message to someone else. And here, so the answer to your question is intuition may involve emotions or not. And it is the broader concept, I would say, but it has an overlap to emotions. Emotional intelligence, as it's defined by many popular books, is like an IQ. I would keep my fingers away from that. To have a number for an EQ, an emotional intelligence quotient, it's based on questionnaires, and as we know, that intuition is not present in the consciousness. And if you ask people about their intuitive process, you will get post hoc answers. And for emotions, I would rather study the functional process rather than a number.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, you can turn on your microphone. I let it possible. So if anybody wishes to ask a question to Professor Gigerenzer, you could please turn on your microphone and ask from there directly, or you can write as a chat message, and we can get it from here. It looks like we don't have any other questions so far. Professor, I wish to thank you a lot for your taking the time and giving your evening hour for us. I'm delighted to have met you in person after having read so much of your work. And I thank again for our audience. And I hope to see you in Istanbul one day. We have much better world than many years ago.
I would love to see you all in Istanbul.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful.
So thank you for your attention, and take heuristics seriously, and take uncertainty seriously.
Yes. We sure will.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good night. See you. Arkadaşlar, başka bir sorunuz olmadığı anlaşılıyor. Ben burada toplantıyı sonlandırıyorum. Herkese iyi geceler. Çok teşekkürler katılımınız için. Herhangi bir sorunuz olursa her zaman yazabilirsiniz. Ben o sorularınızı memnuniyetle Görde iletirim. Bir şekilde en iyi cevabı vermeye çalışırız.
Teşekkür ederiz Mete Hocam. İyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar. Ben teşekkür ederim. Sağ olun.
Mete Bey teşekkür ederim. Teşekkür ederiz. İyi akşamlar. Kitabınız da çok keyifli başladı bu arada. Tekrar teşekkürler.
Evet. Rica ederim. Ne demek?
Peki iyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar herkese.
Teşekkürler, iyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar. Rica ederim.